Welcome to another episode of the Peak Potential Success Show. My name is Fong. I'm an entrepreneur, business strategist, real estate investor, speaker, and also best-selling author. And every single day, I help others unlock their potentials and guide them to succeed. Today on the show, we have another amazing guest. In fact, I've known this person for over 10 years now. He was one of those first people, a very special speaker at an event that I was attending when I was just starting in real estate and investments and stuff like that. And when he went up on stage and spoke, he talked about tax liens and tax deeds, stuff I had no clue what he was talking about, but it was so passionate, so much energy, so much great passion with what he was talking about. I just couldn't wait to get to know him a bit more. And over the years, we still kept in contact. I found out he loves ice cream just like I do. So that kind of bonded us some more. But I'm very, very excited to have him here today and share with us more of his expertise and his knowledge and add some value. He is a person who's been in real estate investing for over 30 years now, specializes in tax liens and deeds. He loves helping people who are either challenged with facing foreclosure or helping people create passive income. He loves finding those win-win solutions. He's been featured on NBC, Fox, TEDx. He loves saying, don't wait to buy real estate and then wait. He's also the author of Radical Real Estate Revolution. So please welcome real estate investor, speaker, author, and coach, Mr. Mike Wolf.
Hey, Fong, thanks so much for having me. And now you mentioned ice cream, I got to go and get some. So I'll be now. Yes, we actually did bond on that. That was one of the first things we learned about each other. So
I couldn't wait. Every time you post a picture about ice cream, I'm like, oh, I need to go get some ice cream because you just made me jealous every single time I see that. But once again, thank you very much for being here. It's been a while since we've talked, and every time I see you online, it's always something very valuable and very great content and stuff that I always watch to learn more about, and very, very excited to interview you. So once again, thank you very much for being here.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Now, for people who don't really know who you are, you're a person who's done a lot of great real estate deals, stuff with tax liens and tax deeds. Would you mind sharing with us, how did you get to who you are today?
Oh my goodness, that was definitely a big evolution along the way. So, well, let's go back to the very, very beginning. One, I never actually intended to be a real estate investor. It was never really on my radar. If we go way back to high school, which is a long time ago for me, I remember middle of grade 12, I had no idea what I wanted to do the following year after I graduated. And my parents, especially my mother, would always like, Mike, you're going to be doctor, lawyer, doc. All I ever heard was you're going to be a doctor or lawyer. Like, I didn't feel like I had much say in the matter. And I'm terrified of blood. So doctor, no matter what, was never going to happen. But I remember watching those shows on TV, and the lawyers always had those fancy offices, and it looked really glamorous. So I thought, okay, you know what, since I don't know what I want to do, might as well make my mother happy. I'll become a lawyer. And so I went to University of Calgary, got my first degree. And by the time I got that first degree, I had what I thought was an unpayable amount of student loans. I thought never in my lifetime would I have the money to pay off. And so I thought, you know what, before I go and get that second degree, I'm going to go and pay these things off. And so I got a job at the phone company. My friend's mother was a manager there. It was government, it was union. And while I was there, I actually managed to get a really good credit score. And after a few years, I actually bought my first home to live in. Shortly after that, I had one of my I had my mortgage broker call me up and say, hey, Mike, if you want, I could get you another mortgage if you want to buy another home. And that was like the weirdest thing anybody had ever said to me at that time. What do you mean? I'm like 23 or 24 years old. I'm single. Why would I ever want a second home? And then you explained to me, well, you buy this home, you put a tenant in there. In 25 years, it's paid off. The mortgage is being paid by somebody else. And every month you get a little bit of cash flow. And in the long run, you get this paid off property, and that's your retirement. And I thought, okay, that kind of makes sense. And so I did exactly that. I bought another property. Back then, I knew nothing about due diligence. So I bought something that was close to home and that was pretty. And that was it. That was the only due diligence I did. And then, luckily, a couple of years after this all happened, still working at the phone company, the market took off in Calgary. And I remember it was kind of like the last 2 years that we've had because of COVID. Same thing back then, but then it was because of oil, had nothing to do with the pandemic, fortunately. But anyway, all of a sudden I was sitting on all this equity, and that was kind of the first time in my life where I knew what I wanted to be when I grew up. The lawyer thing was really my mother's idea. I was living my mother's dream for me, and that was the first time that I had my own dream for me. And so the rest is kind of history. I wish I could say it was all smooth after that. Sometimes when you get lucky on your first deal, it's a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, well, now I had some money to play with, but on the other hand, I didn't really learn anything. I just happened to get, fortunate with the timing. And being in my mid-20s, I took all the credit for it. My ego got way out of control. I thought I knew everything there was to know about real estate. And then I promptly quit my job at the phone company. Also told my mother, I'm not going to be a lawyer. That's your dream, not my dream. And she's still pissed, by the way, to this day. But it's actually a good thing that I did, in a way, because my next deal, I totally bombed. I had no idea. All of a sudden I realized, okay, well, I quit my job. So it's great. I've got this lump sum of cash, but I need to get some cash flow. I need to have a paycheck happening like at least hopefully every 60 or 90 days. And the first time I bought was meant to be a long-term hold. It wasn't meant to be a flip. And suddenly here I am, no job, no ability to qualify for a mortgage, which never really crossed my mind when I quit. And anyway, I managed to lose almost all of what I made on that next deal, because I didn't know anything about doing. Oh, I didn't know I had to get an inspection done, and it went way over budget, way over time. But then something really, the one thing that I really am really glad that I did is I hired a mentor at that point. I had a little bit of money left, no job, no future in real estate without having any help. And so one of the things I love to tell people is get the roadmap before you get in the car. Or I made a big enough mistake on that next deal that it was more expensive than the cost of the mentor. And had I not hired the mentor, right now I might be talking about the laws around real estate, but I wouldn't be here teaching you how to be a real estate investor. So that's kind of my last 33 years in a nutshell. Of course, there's a lot of ups and downs in the middle there, but that's kind of how I got started. And I love sharing that story, only because I meet a lot of people and they go, I'm not sure if I'm cut out for real estate. Well, I wasn't even thinking about real estate, and I managed to make it work. So if I could do it, then trust me, anybody can make this work if they had an ambition to do it, and if that was their passion.
How far were you in the lawyer path until you go, that's it?
Well, University of Calgary, there's no pre-law program. So I actually have a BA in psychology with a minor in sociology. And then assuming I would have gone straight to school, I would have been, my master's would have been in law. And but I never actually really started on that path. I have no regrets about going to university. Everything happened for a reason. It all led to where I'm at. So I wouldn't change a thing. However, had I figured out real estate earlier, it's just been, I can't explain how grateful I am that for some reason I ended up on this path. And like I said, I would have never necessarily chosen it for myself, but it's led to such an amazing life, and not just because of the money, and also just not having to go to punch a clock, and not having a boss, and and also networking with so many amazing people. And it's just been an amazing career, and so fulfilling in so many ways.
Now, you did two things that not many people would actually consider or even think about doing. And one of them was you made that decision to go, I'm going to become a real estate investor. Most people go at that time, what exactly is that? You're on your path to becoming a lawyer, and then you go, hey, I want to do this. That's not really a profession per se, but it's just something that you go, this is what I'm going to do. So how many people at that time goes, what are you doing? I mean, why would you go this route? Yeah, you got one, but that doesn't mean the second one's going to work out. The third one's going to work out. So what kept you going to go, no, this is what I'm going to do?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, because back in those days, if I said I was a real estate investor, people go, well, yeah, but what's your job? Like that was always your what you do with the money that you made at your job. And so for me, I think it's just suddenly I just had this passion. It's like, man, if I did it once, I could do it again. And I was maybe a little bit of a dreamer, because I didn't really have, if you would have known me back then, I was super shy. Like back in high school, I would sit at the back of the class. I never raised my hand. I'd hope the teacher would never look at me. And ironically, actually, I remember in university, I had a project where I had to do some research and then I had to present it live in front of in front of the class. And I was so terrified to stand in front of the class and speak that I actually skipped that day and I took a zero for it. And so getting on this path, I just almost feel like the universe just, for whatever reason, put me on this path and knew what was best for me. And it's led to me growing so much as a person. Like I went from not being able to speak on a stage to now regularly doing that. I was on the TEDx stage a year and a half ago in Las Vegas.
Mhm.
But it's just forced me to grow. And so I just think sometimes happen for a reason. It's not like back then I was thinking, oh, I can see myself. It just felt like finally I found something that I really enjoyed. And other people weren't really doing it, like I said, but I thought, man, if I can make this much money, and I remember being in my cubicle at the phone company and thinking, man, I made this much of the last 2 years at my job, and I made this much in real estate, and I don't even know what I'm doing in real estate. And once again, it got the better of my ego, and I thought I knew everything there was to know about real. It just seemed like a logical thing to do, even though it was like totally crazy. Like in hindsight, it was totally crazy that I did it. But I had burnt the bridges, and like I said, when that one deal that went really, really wrong, when once I told my mother I wasn't going to law school, and she said, Mike, go get your next degree so you have something to fall back on. And then if you want to go pursue real estate, you can do it. I told her, Mom, don't worry, I've got this. And when I screwed up on the next deal, I never to this day have never told her because I didn't want to, especially being a teenager or not teenager, but in your 20s, you never want to tell your parents they're right. And so it kind of propelled me, and I knew I had to figure it out. And so I knew there were a couple people in Calgary that were kind of doing real estate on at least a semi-regular basis. And that's how I found a mentor. But it just all, I don't know. I always feel like I end up on the right path, and I don't really, I like to actually thank the universe and be grateful for the fact that I always just seem to end up in the right place at the right time. And it was never really something I planned on. It just kind of was an evolution. And it's been a great journey that's helped me grow, not just as a business person, but also as a person in general. But it just felt right. It just felt like the right thing to do.
Well, that's awesome. And fortunately, everything, I'm sure a lot of people are very lucky to that you did choose that path because you've helped a lot of people out with their situations. You've taught a lot of people with their investments in their real estate. And you also taught a lot of people how to grow their real estate portfolio as well. You've mentioned a mentor, and that's the second thing I want to touch on because that's also something that not many people would have done. You've already kind of bombed on your second deal. And the last thing that people would think about is, you know what, I'm going to give more money to somebody else so they could show me how to do it right. Most people would have given up by that time. So was that something that you went, you know what, I need somebody now to teach me because I really want to do this? Or did somebody just show up and go, you know what, this is what you should do? And you go, that's what I need.
No, it was more that I had quit my job. I couldn't go back and beg for my job back, nor did I really want to go. Once you get a taste of being in the entrepreneur world and doing your own thing, it's pretty hard. A lot of us, especially myself, we become pretty much unemployable. So I knew I could never, I had learned that I wasn't cut out for the corporate world. And telling my mom that I wasn't going to be a lawyer and then going back to her and telling her she was right, it just felt like in those days. Now, if it happened now, it's like, Mom, you're right. Back in those days, there's not a chance I was going to tell my mother she was right. So I just felt like I had to make it work out because I had already, I was bragging about how great I was and how this is going to be my career and it was going to be easy for me and it was going to be smooth sailing. And then having that really humbling loss, it just brought me back down to earth. And then it really forced me to think about, well, what do I want to do? Do I want to go back to my mom and become a lawyer and live her dream? Do I want, I didn't really know what my plan B was. And because I burnt those bridges, and I wouldn't recommend that, by the way, if anybody's listening, don't quit your job after you do your first real estate deal, especially if you need to qualify for mortgages. Yeah, I couldn't think of a plan B that excited me. This was the only thing that excited me. And I knew I was going to figure it out, but I knew that if I did the trial and error method, like I did at the beginning, and I had to rely on luck, luck's only going to get you so far. And so I just felt like I had no choice.
No, how was it because of your first path of being a lawyer that led you to tax liens? Because you love reading all those contracts?
Oh no, nothing at all. Taxings was just, early, not that early on in my career, but maybe after being in the industry for 10 years. By that time, I was fairly successful doing a bunch of different strategies up in Canada. And I kept hearing about this thing called tax liens and deeds. And I never really knew if it existed. Was it, it was like snuffleupagus. I didn't know if this was a real thing or not. And I had heard a lot of rumors, and I started to read a lot on the topic and just try to figure out how to do it. And the more I read, the more confused I got because there was so much conflicting information. Um, I eventually had to make myself a guinea pig. Luckily, at this point, I had a reasonable amount of money that I could afford to take a few losses along the way. And so I started to apply some of the things that I learned from various different sources to find out what was true and what was false. And it led me on an amazing path. But once again, I always just think the universe puts me in the right place at the right time, and that strategy has been really good to me, and also something that I teach a lot of my students how to do. But a lot of times people think, oh, well, you just do one thing for your entire career and you never try something different. And it's a great strategy, but it's not the only great strategy. And so it's one thing that I'm known for, but it's one of many strategies that I've employed over the years to be successful in this industry. But no, it had nothing to do. Matter of fact, I never really wanted to be a lawyer because I never really wanted to do all
Yeah.
that research. And I love to learn. I'm definitely a lifelong learner. As you know, we've seen each other at a lot of seminars along the way on both our journeys. But I never really liked to, I don't know, that learning the law and just sitting there reading journals, and that never ever, and to this day, does not light me up. I like to learn by going in person to seminars and hanging out with like-minded people and just the energy in the room by working with different gurus, I guess you could say. And but no, it definitely had nothing to do with the whole law school thing. Like I said, was never high on my priority list. So
Would you be able to explain tax liens in a few simple steps for people who don't know how that works? And then also, why is it so advantageous, or why is it such a great strategy to employ when it comes to real estate?
yeah, great question. I guess I should have prefaced that by telling people what it is. So tax liens and tax deeds, by the way, are two different things that stem from the same problem. So that problem is that when you pay your property taxes, part of that goes to, depending on what county you're in or what part of the world you're in. I do my tax liens and deeds in the US. They're pretty rare in Canada. If they're very, very rare in Canada, as a matter of fact. But in the US, every county has a different way that they deal with delinquent taxpayers. And they need that money for their schools, their police and fire departments, or hospitals, etc. And when somebody doesn't pay their property taxes, depending on the state, they'll do one of two things. Some places they will create what's called a tax lien. And so let's say Fong, you had a tax bill of $1,000 and it was due June 1st. So you're getting a letter in the mail, your taxes are due. You decide you're not going to pay it. So shortly after, you get something in the mail from the government saying, okay, Fong, you were late. We're charging you a 15% penalty. Now, them charging you a penalty still doesn't give them the money. They can't go to their chief of police and say, hey, we'll pay you when Fong pays us, we'll pay you. They've got to make payroll whether they collect that tax money or not. So they need that money. And so somebody like myself as an investor, I can say, hey, you know what? I'll give you that $1,000 that Fong initially owed you. But when Fong pays you, I want that 15%. So I send a check to the government, $1,000. When you pay, I get a check back for my 1,000 plus another 15%. And that's what a tax lien is. And they can go up to, well into the 20%, 30. I think one state has 36% penalty. They'll either have penalty or interest or both. And whatever it is that you have to pay as a taxpayer, that goes to the person who buys that lien. So a tax deed is kind of the cousin to that. Instead, this usually is in counties that have enough money that they're not worried about making payroll. They can wait longer to get their money. So Texas comes to mind, for example, which is where I do most of my tax deeds. And with a tax deed, instead of them, basically, they're going to keep sending you notice. They're not going to sell that lien to anybody. Instead, they're going to keep giving you chances, and they're going to say, okay, well, you're late, and we're going to give you this penalty, but if you don't pay eventually, they're saying we're going to eventually put your home up on the auction block. And so they're going to keep sending you stuff in the mail over and over and over again. And you may be ignoring them. Eventually your home is going to go up on the auction block. And those homes will usually go up for the amount of the back taxes plus whatever legal fees that there are. And so I've literally picked up properties, under $10,000, and that's not the down payment. That's actually the purchase price. And we're not talking a shed. We're actually talking a single family home in a decent neighborhood. And I've had I think the record for my students was $7,200 was the lowest. So it's a very, had I known this strategy when I was first starting, it's been around for a long, long time. It was around when I first started. I didn't know about it. But had I known about that, back when I first started, I was doing things very traditionally. I was saving up a down payment, qualifying for a mortgage once I could qualify for a mortgage again, or using private money. But I was doing things very traditional. And then when I learned how to do that strategy, it's like, hey, we can do a whole bunch of these at once. And like I said, that's one of many strategies that I use. I don't want people to think that's the only thing that you should necessarily learn in real estate, but it's definitely advantageous to know how to do it. It's also very dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. And I can tell you that when I was trying to figure it out, using some of the information that I learned in other courses and in books, I definitely made some costly mistakes along the way. And once I figured out how to do it, that's when I decided, well, I'm actually going to start teaching it, because by that point, I was starting to do what I would call more institutional real estate, as opposed to buying one at a time. Then I started to buy big packages of properties from the banks. And I stopped doing that. I didn't stop, but I did a lot less of the tax liens and deeds and focused more on, as you know, I sell turnkey properties, which means that we buy them and fix them and put tenants in place. We sell those to investors all over the world. And my demand, I can't just buy one property at an auction, and I need to buy 20, 30 at a time. Excuse me. So I basically stopped doing that or slowed down on that strategy. But I got people calling me all the time saying, Mike, I want to get started in real estate, but I have very little capital. How do I get started? And I thought, well, this is a perfect training ground for people that don't have a lot of cash that want to get in the game. And so that led to another business, just training and mentoring, and which I love doing. I didn't know how much I would love doing it until I actually did it, but it's a lot of fun, and it's very rewarding watching your students succeed. But yeah, it is an amazing strategy amongst many others that a lot of people don't know, that have either never heard of or don't know how to do. And that's one of the things that I really pride myself in, is I've always been willing to go the extra step to learn something that most other people don't know how to do, even though I know I might lose money at first learning how to do it. But I eventually will figure it out. And once I do, then I'll make up for all those losses. And so it's one of the things I recommend people do, is that don't just do the minimum, and always keep educating yourself and keep learning and keep networking and meeting people doing different strategies, and be open-minded to things and be coachable.
Now, you mentioned at the very beginning there that some of these strategies may apply to certain countries, certain places and whatnot. Now, if people are thinking, hey, I really want to do this, but I live in Canada or I live in another country, is it possible to do these remote?
Absolutely, 100%. Matter of fact, I've never lived in, most of my tax deeds have been in Texas. I've never lived in Texas. I used to go to the auction semi-regularly, and then I built a team. And so I have people that actually go and represent me at the auction, and my students. They go and drive around the properties. I've got boots on the ground, drive around and looking at the properties, checking the condition. I've got people pulling title. There's a lot of things that can go wrong on a tax deed deal. And I've got people that handle like 99% of it. There's still work that, if you're in Canada, for example, you could do 99% of it with other people. And there's one small thing you need to do, which you can do from your computer, and that's, well, you have to decide which properties do you want and what is your maximum bid going to be. After that, you just delegate it and other people handle it. And that's one of the reasons that my program's been really successful, is that I get a lot of foreign investors that don't live in the US, or if they live in the US, they don't live in Texas, which is the best place to do this. And they get access to my team, so they don't have to go. Building a team, as you probably know, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of stress sometimes, because people don't always perform as expected. But luckily, I've built my dream team now in Texas, and so. But you can do just about any strategy. when I first started, I thought I had to do it close to home. I've made way more money in places I've never even been to by having the right people, the right boots on the ground. And so I think it's a misconception that people should invest only where they live. I think that really limits what your options are. And I invest all over North America, and I've started looking at Costa Rica, and I don't live in any, other than I don't really live anywhere these days because I'm a nomad. But when I used to live in Calgary, I was doing way more deals in the US, and I stopped actually working in Canada once I discovered the opportunities in the US.
Hmm. Well, one of the things that people need to have in order to do deals outside of their hometown and whatnot, or outside of their country, is to have people they can trust, or have a team in place, or a group of people that they can trust to either do the legwork or to guide them along. What makes it? What do you do in order for you to eventually trust somebody to do these things for you, or to build out relationships so that you can pursue these deals outside of your country?
Yeah, well, these days we live in amazing times to be real estate investors because there's so much information about people online. So we can at least get reviews on people. Back when I first started, it's like I pulled out the yellow pages. I don't know if you're old enough to remember yellow pages, but used to pull out the yellow pages and it was trial and error. Like this guy's got a really big ad. He must be successful. I'll call him. These days we can go online. We can talk to other investors. You can reach other people online. It's really easy to at least get some recommendations for people as a starting point. And then the other thing I'll say is that A players only hang out with A players. You're not going to find an amazing property manager who has a really crappy, bunch of contractors on his team. So if you find one really good person, quite often they're connected to the other good people, and they've already got the teams, they've got the systems in place. They're already used to working together. And so that's one way. Another way is, as I mentioned, I sell turnkey properties. The big advantage to that is you don't need to even go find you don't even need to go find the property. You don't even need to find out where what markets make sense. You can go with somebody who's already done that, built the teams for you. But the great news is, like I said, I mean, these days we have access to so much information online, and one of the things I recommend, though, especially as you really scale, one of the things that's really allowed me a lot of freedom is that I don't oversee the people on my teams. I have other people oversee, and there's very few people that report to me within my organization. So, for example, my main assistant, she lives in Frankfurt, Germany, and she does a lot of my marketing. She does 98% of the stuff behind the scenes she handles, but I've given her the ability to hire whoever she needs. So we have a bunch of people in the Philippines that I've never spoken to, I've never met, that are doing a lot of our marketing stuff and making a lot, and they're great, but I don't have to oversee it. I've also got a whole team on the ground in Atlanta where I do my turnkey properties. I don't oversee it. I'm not involved in the day-to-day on that. I put in the capital, I built the teams, but the systems in place, and then I just let it run. To me, it's like building an assembly line, pushing start, and then stepping away from it. You don't need to go there and micromanage it. You need somebody to kind of keep on top of it, let you know if there's a problem, but you don't want every single person calling you. And then the second part to that, and I've mentioned the word systems a few times, you want to systemize things. You might have the perfect team, but you don't want them calling you every day saying, hey, 123 Main Street, what color carpet should we put in there? What countertops? If you came to Atlanta and looked at my homes, they all have the exact same carpet, exact same paint, exact same countertops, same appliances. So nobody's calling me with all these little questions that take up your entire day. And so those are some of the things that I've learned over the years on how to be more efficient, how to make your businesses run better, and how to make it foolproof so you don't have to have like an absolute expert running in every single position in your business. Like look at McDonald's, for example. You can go anywhere in the world to McDonald's. I'm vegan, so I'm not recommending their food, but I will say you could go to McDonald's anywhere in the world and you could have a high school kid making the exact same product in Thailand as they are in Hawaii, as they are in Los Angeles, as they are in Edmonton. So if they can manage to do that with high school kids, you can do that with your real estate team, but you have to have the right systems in place.
Now, you're building systems, you're talking to investors, you're teaching other people how to do real estate, you're speaking on stages, you're building teams. But at the very beginning, you said you were that shy person in the back of the room who did not want to speak at all. So how did you make that transition? Was it more like I was forced into it and then you kind of force yourself to start speaking more, or did you put yourself into this whole educational theme of learning how to speak and communicate better?
To be honest, I absolutely never ever wanted to go up on a stage. I never wanted to be in the spotlight. I never wanted to be. Uh, it was never my desire. And luck, I became successful in real estate at first with very little. At first, I hated networking, for example, and then as I started to put myself out there and get out of my comfort zone, I actually started to like networking and realize that, hey, you know what, this is kind of fun meeting other people that are like-minded. And so, but with the actual speaking, and I think this is where I first met you, but I can't remember. I was asked by a very prestigious real estate training company. I won't mention their name, but out of the blue, I started investing in the US probably close to 20 years ago. And once the recession kicked in the US, a lot of the American training companies that would go across the US to teach people real estate, nobody wanted to hear about real estate. They had all lost money. People are losing their homes. And they basically came up to Canada because Canadians, we were pretty fortunate. We did pretty good in that last recession. We got hit, but not nearly as badly as they did. And so I started to meet some people involved in this organization, and they go, so you're investing only in the US? You're Canadian. And back then it wasn't the cool thing to do yet for Canadians to invest in the US. Mm-hmm. And so as they were touring across Canada, I got a call out of the blue saying, we're looking for a Canadian who's investing in the US. Your name keeps coming up. You're the only person people mention. And could you come speak for us? And it would have been really easy for me to say no, especially at that time. But because the organization was so well known and the person who's the face of it is one of my heroes, I couldn't really say no. So I forced myself, and I was like terrified. And I remember the first time I went on stage, in my mind, I was stuttering and sweating profusely, and I thought I totally bombed. I thought I'm never going to get invited back. But other people didn't notice it. I felt it internally, but nobody else noticed it. And as a matter of fact, people were coming up to me going, "Oh, that was so inspiring. And how long have you been teaching this?" And I remember one of the people, I said, "It feels like forever," even though that was my first time, but it did feel like forever. But it just kind of forced me to get out of my comfort zone and do something I would have never chosen for myself. So I'm so glad I did it. It would have been, I didn't need the notoriety, or there was nothing that I needed other than it was hard to say no because of who was asking me. Mm-hmm. And I use that now. Anytime there's something that I feel like, oh, who am I to do this? So for example, when I started shooting videos for my YouTube channel, I was terrified. I didn't want to go in front, even though I had now spoken on stages. I don't want to get in front of I was scared of that camera. But then I thought back and I go, man, when you put yourself out there and speak on stage, you can't take back what you said. If you say something, if you screw up, you can't take it back. On camera, you can have as many takes as you want and put out the one that you're happy with. So to this day, I still don't watch my videos. I'll make them. I send it to my team, let them deal with it. They edit it. I never watch them. But I've gotten over that fear. And every time that I have a new challenge, I'll look back and I'll think, well, this isn't as tough as that first time I ever spoke on stage. And I'll always use that as an anchor to help propel myself in whatever it is that I'm, not feeling like I'm adequate enough to do.
How many takes was that very first video that you did?
Oh man, it was so bad. You know what? It's funny because I back then I would do 50 takes and I didn't like any of them. And then my assistant who was helping me shoot them, she goes, "Mike, they're good. You're too critical of yourself." And so we'd eventually just release them, even though I wasn't necessarily fully happy with them. But after a while, I got to being able to do everything in one take. And as a matter of fact, I think when you're speaking from the heart, instead of I stopped rehearsing. I stopped getting in my head. And instead, I just pretended I was at a barbecue. Imagine I was at a barbecue with you, Fong, and you said, "Hey, Mike, I hear you're doing tax deeds. Like today, I didn't know you were going to ask me about tax deeds. I didn't rehearse for it, but it's just like you speak from the heart. And when you speak from the heart, you're never, as long as you're not lying, everything's going to be. It's just whatever you say is going to be right. And so, so I got over that. I guess being a perfectionist when it came to the videos. And now I do almost everything in one take. Occasionally, it's like I'll finish the video and go, "Oh, I forgot to say this," and I'll do a second one. But 98% of the time, 99% of the time, it's all one take. But it's kind of funny because I don't watch them, but a lot of times I feel like if I were to redo my early videos, I could do them better now. I'm more confident. I've obviously learned a few things over the years, but it's very rare that a week goes by where somebody doesn't, I don't get an email from somebody saying, oh, I watched that video and I just need to see that video today. And so I just leave all my videos intact, even though I'm sure if I watch them, some of the earlier ones would be pretty embarrassing, but we just leave them. And the other thing for anybody who's maybe thinking of doing video but is afraid, remember that the videos that you put out there, they're not for you. They're for the person that needs to see that video. And so if you put it in that, if you frame it that way, then I'm actually denying people something that they might need because of my being a perfectionist. So now I just put stuff out there, and luckily I've got over that fear.
Awesome. That sounds very, very familiar. I remember when I was recording my first videos with my coach, and we went through so many takes that eventually he goes, let me try something. He goes and tapes like a piece of black tape over the red button or the red light. And I stood there like, where do you think I am? Stupid. I know the light's still on.
Yeah, so sometimes though, that kind of just puts it kind of front and, hey, this is recording. This is like, and I could see why that might work actually. Did that help you?
No.
Oh, okay.
Because I could still envision that blinking light, right? So eventually, to this day, I still don't watch my videos. I either watch it with no sound or listen to it with no video.
I don't do either. So this recording, after it's made, I'll never actually look at it. I might ask for it. My marketing team might chop it up and use it for different things, but I'll never actually watch it again. But in all honesty, I know that they teach you that you should, because you can improve your performance by seeing, hey, did I say or did I stutter, or where did I mess it? Where can I do it better? But I still don't do it. I know it's good advice, but I don't listen to it.
I totally get it. Actually, I recently heard that there's a lot of actors that don't like watching the playbacks because they don't want to get self-conscious. So they never watch their movies, they never watch their own shows, they never watch anything because they just want to be in the moment. So I'm like, I'll use that.
I can 100% relate, because I think if I watched my own videos, I would probably stop making them. And the only reason I can do it, I'm not afraid of the camera anymore, but now I just don't like seeing myself, and I don't like hearing myself, and it's always, I don't know, it's very awkward. So I just don't do it, and it allows me to keep doing them, because like I said, I probably get too much in my head and start thinking about where I'm screwing up, as opposed to, hey, let's just make a video from the heart, and that I can do.
Now, something else you mentioned before was that you did not like networking. And there's a lot of people out there who don't like networking as well. Is there anything, tips or tricks that you've done with yourself that allowed you to get over that hump, to start building relationships, meeting people, going out there?
Well, even to this day, I mean, I absolutely love networking now, but if you were to put me in a room where I know absolutely nobody, I tend to be really quiet, and I tend to be really reserved. And I actually won't start the conversation, but once somebody starts a conversation with me, no problem. I'm on it. So, one of the things I recommend, if you're afraid, if you're a real estate investor and you feel awkward going to a networking event to do with real estate, go on Meetup and go to like a pub night or something. Or go to something that interests you, a different topic besides real estate. If you go to pub night, everybody's really social. You're going to be sitting around a table, and everybody's going to introduce themselves. And the first thing they're going to ask you is, who are you? What do you do? And I've got a lot of business in real estate, actually, by going to things not related to real estate. So I'd recommend going something like that. And it's just something that, as you do it, you realize that, hey, this is, so for me anyway, I really enjoy it now. Like, I love hanging out with other people, meeting other people. It didn't come naturally to me, but after I did it, I think pretty much everything that I've had to overcome that I thought was challenging, eventually, after you just do it a few times, it doesn't become challenging anymore. And then you're always going to find another challenge. And then you're going to say, oh, then like I said earlier, I look back, especially on that first time I ever spoke on a stage, and I think I could do just about anything now as a result of, I just look back on that, and I say, hey, if I could get over that, I can absolutely do anything.
Mm-hmm. Now, you surround yourself with amazing people. You surround yourself with coaches and mentors. Over the course of your real estate and investing business career, what would you say is one of the best advice that you've ever been given?
Oh boy. I think there's been so much. I wouldn't even know where to start. I mean, I've learned so much from other people, and I think one of the things that really inspired me was a 4 Hour Work Week, Timothy Ferriss.
Mhm.
I was already, by the time I read that, I was already semi doing that, but it really, when I read that, and by the way, if you haven't read it, it's all about working less, working smarter, not harder, I would say. And I was already starting to do that, but it really kind of put it in the forefront for me that, hey, I want to hire more teams, more systems. I want to do less work, and I want to do the things that I'm passionate. I want to have more time for family, more time to travel, more time to do things that are important and that are. I do a lot of volunteering. Those things are important, and it's very easy when you're a real estate investor to get caught in the trap of being a workaholic, because one, it's fun and it never
Mhm.
feels like work. But sometimes when you're working those 12, 14, 15-hour days like I used to do, you're missing your kids' soccer practice, and you're not paying attention to your health because you're always eating fast food because you're always in a hurry. It's so easy to have a very unbalanced life. Even though you might have lots of money in your bank, you
Mhm.
can have lots of money and be very miserable and very unhealthy. And so that was a really big influence on me. Meeting Brendan Burchard, who's now somebody who I really look up to, and whenever you go to a live event, you'll see me. I volunteer for him because I love his stuff. And for those who don't know him, he's a lot of personal development, but also one of the smartest online marketers. And he kind of changed my mindset because I always like I would hear of people putting on seminars and making $1 million in a weekend or several,
Mhm.
multi-million dollars in a weekend. I was always, yeah, no way. It's got to be a scam. And then, but actually watching him do it in an ethical way, in a heart-centered way, inspired me, and it kind of raised the ceiling for what I thought my worth was. And so there's been numerous people along the way that have definitely had a big inspiration on me. Reading the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, everybody needs to read that book. Um, they all have had a profound effect on me, but I can't, it's so hard to limit it to one because I've had so many mentors and coaches and people that I've looked up to along the way that it's like, oh, well, look what they're doing. I could do that too.
Yeah.
And so it happens, still happens. Like it never ends. And that's why I encourage people. And I know you're a great example of it, Fong, being a lifelong learner. Like there's always another level, and it never really ends. And so you've got to
Mhm.
keep upgrading your skills, upgrading your mindset. And if you keep doing that, then things will just keep getting better and better as you go.
Mhm. You mentioned in that segment there about giving back, and that's something you've done a lot of. Is there something in particular that you want to give more focus and more attention to for people out here to kind of get to know?
Well, I mean, I've done a lot of very diverse give back projects. I tend to give to things that involve children and animals because neither of them really have a voice. So I've spent time at orphanages in Costa Rica and given to one that my friend runs in India, for example. I do a lot of stuff around animals. As I mentioned, I'm vegan. I'm not trying to convert anybody on this call, but I spend time at animal rights conferences. But I think that the project I've been, well, probably there's one where we brought some water filters to an island called Vanuatu, which is between Australia and New Zealand. They got hit by a hurricane and had no clean drinking water, and it's an amazing feeling when you see somebody having clean drinking water for the first time in a while. But my favorite give back project was after Hurricane Katrina. Obviously, New Orleans was decimated by that. And I had been to New Orleans several times before, never to do real estate, just to visit. And anyway, to make a long story short, I ended up building a team there, and we fixed up a whole bunch of homes in one particular neighborhood and brought a bunch of people back to the city that got displaced by the storm and never got anything from the insurance companies. So that was probably the toughest rehab project we've ever done because these homes were under 20 feet of water for 3 weeks straight. And there was a ton of molds. We had to basically take everything down to the studs. And so anyway, I'm very grateful to say that we were able to bring a lot of families back that would have never been able to come back. And to this day, that's my favorite real estate project, let alone my favorite volunteer project. That's my favorite real estate project I've ever done because it's the most meaningful, when you can actually, whenever I go back there and you see that, hey, I made an impact, a positive impact on this community. And anyway, it was just a uh, very memorable project and one that I'm so grateful that I had the ability to be part of. I hope they never get hit again. But I actually tried to do the same thing in Puerto Rico, but there's so much red tape, we never really got that off the ground. But anyway, it was great to combine giving back and real estate in that particular project.
Mhm. Cool, very cool. Now let's put you back on the world stage. And throughout this entire interview, you already gave a lot of great advice, a lot of great messages. But if there was one message that you would to give for everybody to remember Mike Wolf for, what would that message be?
Oh boy, that's a tough one because I could go on for hours and hours. I think the biggest thing, like when I look back on, my career, there's been numerous. There was Mike 1.0, there's Mike 2.0. I'm on Mike 820,000 hours. I don't even know what number I'm on. There's been so many, so many, just getting to a different level. And there's a point in my life where, like I said, I had tons and tons of money. People always ask me, when were you financially free? And I'd say I've been pretty much financially free probably since my late 30s, maybe mid 30s. But I didn't have freedom. I had financial freedom, but I didn't have time freedom. I didn't have health freedom. I didn't have the other freedoms that go with that. And so I think my message would be, instead of chasing money, money is super important. But if you could put money on autopilot, so it comes in effortlessly, I compare it to oxygen. Oxygen is the most important thing we have, but I'm not thinking to myself right now, I hope Fong's not breathing too much because there's only so much oxygen. We don't think about it. It's the most important thing we've got, yet it's so abundant, we don't even think about it. Money is equally abundant. It's just you need to train your brain and yourself on how to have it coming in on autopilot. And that's through, in my opinion, passive income creates that, where you don't worry about the money anymore. You have a certain number of properties, the money comes in every month, and it covers all your bills and then some, and then anything else that you do is all like bonus. But once you've got that, then you can stop focusing on chasing money all the time. And once you do that, I wish instead of just a bank account, we had a happiness account and we had a fulfillment account. And we measured that on a regular basis, because I think when you start chasing happiness and fulfillment, and happiness to me comes from hanging out with my grandkids and my daughter, traveling, that's one of my favorite things to do. Fulfillment comes from helping others and giving back and volunteering and the mentorship that I give. All that stuff makes you feel very fulfilled inside, and no amount of money can replace that. So get your money on autopilot, create a life that you love. It doesn't have to be the same as mine, but just realize that money is abundant. There's lots of it out there. Quit reading the news, quit listening to the news that makes it sound like the whole world's collapsing and there's this financial crisis. That's all a bunch of BS. Instead of worrying about things you can't control, focus on the things that you can control. Focus on your economy within your home. Focus on your happiness, your health, and don't worry about all that stuff, all that noise going on out there around you. Most of it is just made up. And so, anyway, my biggest piece of advice is to get your money in order. Get the money out of the equation where you're not thinking about it all the time, and then focus on the things that really matter, like family, health, giving back, and your life will be 100 times more exciting than having just a big bank account.
Good words to live by. Well, this time has gone very, very fast. I love talking to you and got a lot of great stories from you and learned a lot from you. So thank you very much for that. Now, before I let you go, I got five, six quick questions for you. Just give me the first thing that comes to mind.
All right.
All right. Stranded on a deserted island, one food to eat for the rest of your life, no consequence. What would that be?
Oh man, pizza for sure. Yeah. Obviously ice cream, but if it had to be something with more, yeah, let's go with ice cream. Actually, let's go with gelato. Let's up it a notch. Let's just go with gelato. I think I can live off that.
Favorite flavor?
Oh man, you're killing me. That's why we have variety. It's so difficult. You got to mix it up. But I would say, man, it's so tough. I'll go with cookies and cream, but I feel bad. I feel like I'm having to pick my favorite kid.
You're leaving some out. Hollywood calls and go, you know what, Mike, we need to do a biopic on you, but you get to choose who plays you.
Fong, I would get you to play me. That's a good question. Well, I would pick Robert De Niro only because he's my favorite actor. He doesn't look anything like me, but I think he would do an amazing job.
They'll find a way. They'll find a way to make
anyway,
him.
They turn me into a gang. I have to be turned into a gangster though, so that'd be interesting.
Robert Redford shows up to your place. and says, "Hey, I got the part. Let's hang out. Let's get to know each other." And he goes, "But I'm hungry." What's that special dish that you could prepare?
Well, I don't cook, so I just pull the gelato out of the freezer and give them some of that. And if you can't be happy eating gelato, I don't know what it takes because like that's my happy food. So I don't, but I don't cook. For the record, I know how to make microwave popcorn and I can
Mhm.
boil water to make tea. And other than that, I am not self-sufficient. So I eat almost every meal in a restaurant because I'm usually traveling.
Uh,
So I wouldn't actually cook anybody anything because I'd probably give them food poisoning.
you're going on one of your longest road trips. You're driving. Okay. For some reason or other, there's only one song that plays over and over and over again. What's that one song you don't mind listening to?
Oh my goodness, you are one song. I don't even know if I can answer that one. It's like we're down to the last question here. And I really oh man, there's let's do Alive by Pearl Jam. But once again, if I listen to one song more than like three times in a row, I'd go nuts. I just have to get out of the car and I don't know, I'd have to go buy some more music.
Okay. Actually, I have one last question. Give me a number from 1 to 5.
Let's go with four.
1, 2, 3, 4. So, how is success similar to a roller coaster?
Oh man, that's easy. Well, here's the thing though. When you first start, it's much more of a roller coaster. There's a lot more ups and downs. And if you're doing things properly though, eventually you do a lot of climbing upwards. And then the coming down is more fun because you're not it's not the same. It's not a loss. It's just like sometimes you do a really big deal and then you take a break and you go on a nice vacation and that's your coming down. It's not losing money coming down. So, but yeah, definitely when you first start, it definitely feels like a roller coaster. And here's the thing for anybody who may be just starting in real estate, one day you're going to look back. I look back at some of my lowest moments in my career where things just weren't going right. And I had what I considered massive failure. And I like to think that life happens for you, not to you. And sometimes those lowest moments lead to your biggest successes. Sometimes, like I look at that deal that was miserable after my first deal, the next deal that totally crashed. And at the time, trust me, I was not a happy camper and I had nothing good to say about it. But I think I needed that lesson in humbleness. And I think if all my deals went as smooth as the first deal, I'd probably be a real jerk right now. I'd have lots of money and be an ass. So but you need these are all lessons. Everything is a lesson. And so yeah, enjoy the roller coaster, enjoy the journey. You'll look back and you'll realize it was all worth it.
Awesome. So that's how success is like a roller coaster. Any final words from you? I know you have like books out, you have a YouTube channel. How do people find you? How do people reach you for learning more about what you do or having you as their coach and whatnot? So how do people find you?
Well, first of all, you can reach me at info@mikewolfmastery.com, info@mikewolfmastery.com. And can I give them a free ebook?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so I'll give that to you. You can put it in the notes or however you do it. And it's on the top strategies in real estate that are working right now, even if you have little or no money. And because when I started, I was very fortunate to have had a very creative mortgage broker that helped me get into this business. And I had no money. I was a starving university student trying to pay off student loans, remember? So I love to go for the underdog and help people that maybe are thinking, oh, I can't get into real estate because I've got little or no capital. So I talk about things like tax liens and deeds in there, but I've got a whole bunch of other strategies you can do to get started. And I actually wrote it at the beginning of the pandemic. So stuff you can actually do on your computer without even leaving your desk if you wanted to. So
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you very much again for that. And also everybody else out there, make sure you find Mike's YouTube channel, pick up his ebook, and also just get in touch with him. He has a lot of great information, lots of great content, and you'll always be learning something from Mr. Mike Wolf here. So thank you very much again. Thanks for your time. Thanks for everything you've done here. And until next time, he is Mike Wolf. My name is Fong. Today is the day to log your peak potential. Well, I'll see you later.